What drives a person to risk everything, even when the chance of failure seems almost certain? There are those who are born to accept reality, and then there are those who never accept limits. They challenge, they persist, they break down every barrier to make the impossible possible. Elon Musk is one of them. From sleeping on the office floor and working through the night to the countless times his company teetered on the brink of bankruptcy. He's been through it all, but he never stopped. He never gave up. For him, failure wasn't a reason to quit. It was the fuel to push even harder. Are you ready to discover the secret of those who never back down? The hum of the camera filled the quiet interview room. The spotlight fell on the chair across from Elon Musk, who sat up straight, hands clasped on his lap. The interviewer leaned forward, his voice slow and sharp. You know, there are American heroes who disagree with your vision. Neil Armstrong, Gene Cernan. They've spoken out against commercial flights in the way you're developing them. What do you think of that? Musk paused, his eyes flashing with an emotion hard to place. He bit his lip, as though weighing each word. Then, with a low voice, he responded, I'm really sad to see that because, those people, they were my heroes. So it's truly difficult. The room fell silent for a few seconds. The interviewer continued to watch, waiting. There was a deep sincerity in Musk's eyes. Not anger, nor disappointment, but a sadness mixed with a tinge of regret. He continued, I wish they could visit and see firsthand what we're doing. I think it would change their minds. That simple statement carried a profound sense of hope. The people who once inspired Musk were now the ones doubting him. But rather than rebutting, he hoped they would understand, see the ideal he was striving for. The interviewer nodded, as if understanding some part of his emotion. The atmosphere in the room grew heavier. They inspired you to do this, right? Musk smiled softly, a smile both warm and thoughtful. Yes, they did, and that's why I'm still pushing forward. That brief moment left a lasting message. Great dreams will always face doubt, but it is belief in the future, in humanity's ability to overcome limits, that provides the true drive to move forward. The interviewer fell silent for a moment before continuing. So, what's been your biggest failure, and how did it change you? Musk smiled faintly, but it wasn't a smile of relief. He leaned back, his gaze becoming distant. Maybe the times when I thought everything had collapsed. Not just once, but many times. I've been on the verge of bankruptcy, and the world doubted me. But the important thing is I never let those failures define me. The interviewer nodded, seemingly waiting for a more detailed story. Musk paused, then continued. Look at SpaceX. We failed 3 times with our rocket launches. Each time was a devastating blow. When the 3rd launch failed, I barely had enough money for another shot. If the 4th one failed, that would have been the end. He stopped, his eyes gleaming with determination. But I couldn't give up. I put everything on the line for that 4th launch. And then it succeeded. Without that moment, there wouldn't be a SpaceX today. The room was still. No need for elaborate words. His story itself was enough to inspire. The interviewer smiled gently, sensing the weight of what had just been shared. Musk reminisced about the most stressful days of SpaceX's early days. He had to make tough decisions that most people wouldn't even dare imagine. There was no reason to hire anyone, so I became the lead engineer for the rocket. He shared, his eyes seemingly lost in past memories. Those were the days when SpaceX was nothing more than a young company with endless challenges. Musk had no choice but to solve everything himself, even when the best engineers would have hesitated. With each failure, like a heavy blow to his logic, he would have to ask himself, should I give up? But the answer was always no. I never give up, he said, with unyielding resolve. Every time a SpaceX rocket exploded, it wasn't just him feeling the heart-stopping moment. It was the entire team. But he knew there was only one thing to do: keep going. Many people tried to convince me to quit, and even a close friend of mine put together a series of videos of rockets exploding and made me watch them, he recalled. But instead of being swayed by their worries, I became more determined. In those moments, I didn't just see failure. I saw opportunities opening up. Each explosion was a new lesson. Each time, we learned something that helped SpaceX rise and move forward. It was in those moments, when everything seemed impossible, that Musk found his strength. There's no reason to give up, he told himself. His persistence, which might seem irrational to others, was the very thing that allowed him to overcome all the obstacles. He didn't let fear or others' doubts drag him down. Even in his most uncertain moments, he believed that success comes only when you push through the hardships. The clear lesson we can learn is this: never let failure hold you back. Like Elon Musk, sometimes in our darkest times, we find the most valuable opportunities to grow and succeed. So, even when the path ahead is unclear, keep moving forward. Every step brings you closer to your goal. Musk paused for a moment, as if recalling all the times he had bet everything on ideas that seemed absurd. We're doing things that at first glance seem impossible, he said, his voice calm but resolute. But luckily, at least so far, they've succeeded. Success, if we can even call it that, has never been certain. He knew that from the very beginning. From SpaceX to Tesla, every project has been a no-turning-back adventure. Even when everything became fragile, when everyone around him urged him to stop, Musk kept going forward because he knew that great things never come easily. He looked at the audience, his eyes sharp yet understanding. Now is the time to take risks, he said. When you're young, with few commitments, you can pursue bold things. But as you get older, responsibility grows. When you have a family, you're no longer betting just on yourself. You're betting on your loved ones, too. There was a thoughtful tone in his voice, as though he too could feel the weight of those words. He knew that feeling well. When SpaceX was on the brink of collapse, when Tesla was struggling through a financial crisis, it wasn't just a personal failure. It was a responsibility to those who believed in him: engineers, investors, and even his family. So, if you have a chance to do something big, do it now, he said, his voice stronger. Take risks. Do what others are too afraid to do. Don't wait until you're caught up in life's responsibilities. Now is the time to act. The entire room fell silent, as though every word spoken by him had touched the deepest thoughts of everyone present. What Elon Musk said wasn't just advice. It was a call to action. A call to live boldly, to embrace failure, and to dare to change the world in ways that only the bravest could ever attempt. Elon Musk smiled, his gaze distant, as if recalling the early days when he decided to dive into the electric car industry, a field almost no one believed in at that time. Have you ever regretted pursuing these crazy ideas? No, I wouldn't regret it. He shook his head, his voice warm but resolute. The interviewer leaned forward, intrigued. How did you think you could start an auto company and succeed with it? Elon chuckled softly. Actually, I didn't really think Tesla would succeed. I thought the chances of failure were very high. His voice held no hint of regret or hesitation, just a simple truth he had accepted long ago. The interviewer frowned. Then why did you try? If you thought from the start it could fail, why dive in? Elon looked directly into the interviewer's eyes, his gaze intensifying. Because if something is important enough, you have to try, even when the odds of failure are so high. The room seemed to pause for a moment. No one said a word. Perhaps they were trying to understand what they had just heard, a bold philosophy of life, one that stood apart from conventional thinking. He continued, at the time, there was a misconception that electric cars could only be slow, ugly, and boring like a golf cart. I didn't know if Tesla would succeed, but I knew that at least we could change how people viewed electric cars. And what about the opposition? How did you make a decision when everyone said it was a crazy idea? Elon paused for a moment, then slowly spoke. I think the first thing to understand is that I'm not someone who is fearless. I feel fear very clearly. It's not something I can just get rid of. He stopped, as if carefully choosing the right words to express his thoughts. But sometimes, when you believe in something enough, when it's important enough to not ignore, you do it despite the fear. It's not the absolute courage, nor an immunity to fear, but the ability to act despite it that creates greatness. And in that moment, perhaps everyone in the room understood that it was this mindset that had taken Elon Musk from what seemed like impossible ideas to accomplishments that the world had to acknowledge. The interviewer leaned forward again, curiosity in his eyes. How did you even think about starting an auto company and believe you could succeed? Elon Musk smiled, but it wasn't a smile of utter confidence. It was the smile of someone who had walked through the depths of doubt. Actually, I didn't really think Tesla would succeed, he said plainly. I thought the chance of failure was very high. A brief silence took over. That answer went against the common expectation. A great entrepreneur should surely believe in the success of their endeavor, right? But for Elon Musk, the truth mattered more than empty words. Then why did you try? The interviewer couldn't hide his surprise. If you thought from the beginning that it could fail, why dedicate your life to it? Elon Musk nodded slowly, as if he had asked himself that question thousands of times before. Because if something is important enough, you have to try, even when the odds of failure are very high. That statement, simple yet profound. There are moments in life when we stop measuring everything by the possibility of success or failure, and instead measure it by how important it is to us and to the world. He continued. At the time, everyone had this wrong idea that electric cars could only be slow, ugly, and boring like a golf cart. I didn't know if Tesla would last, but I knew that at least we could change that perception. If we could show that an electric car could be beautiful, powerful, and actually fun to drive, then even if we failed, we'd still leave our mark. But how did you make a decision when everyone said this was a crazy idea? Elon Musk paused for a moment, as if carefully choosing each word. First of all, I have to say that I'm not someone who doesn't feel fear. I feel fear very clearly, even strongly. He emphasized his gaze serious. But sometimes when you believe in something deeply, when it's important enough to not be ignored, you do it, even with fear. It wasn't reckless risk-taking, but courage. The willingness to face fear and act in spite of it that made great people. In that moment, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. No one spoke, but everyone understood that it was perhaps fear itself that had driven Elon Musk to achieve things that others would never dare to attempt. Elon Musk leaned slightly back in his chair, his eyes gleaming with a deep thoughtfulness. He wasn't just talking about technology. He was speaking a vision, a future far beyond the present, where humanity would no longer be confined by the limits of Earth. When thinking about a goal, I always ask myself, what technological solution is necessary to achieve it? And then I try to move forward as fast as possible in that direction. He paused for a moment, as if making sure his message was understood. Beneath the bold entrepreneur exterior, Musk was an idealist. He didn't just want to build companies. He wanted to build the future, becoming a multi-planetary species, exploring space, reaching out to the stars. Believe me, I think that's essential for the long-term survival of humanity, he said, his voice steady but resolute. That's one of the reasons I'm pursuing this. But the reason that excites me, the reason that drives me every day, is that it creates a sense of adventure. It makes people excited about the future. He stopped, sweeping his gaze across the room. The people here, whether engineers, investors, or audience members, shared one thing in common. a thirst to go beyond the limits of reality. Imagine two scenarios, Elon continued, his eyes lighting up. One where humanity is forever trapped on Earth, until one day, he didn't finish the sentence, but everyone understood. The fragility of a civilization confined to a single planet. A natural disaster, an unforeseen event, and everything we know could vanish. Then he leaned slightly forward, his voice filled with energy. In another scenario, where we've reached beyond space, where our descendants can step on other planets, build new cities, and explore things never known before. A world full of hope, conquest, and limitless possibilities. A silence blanketed the room. It wasn't because they didn't understand, but because they were imagining that very future, one that may have once seemed like a distant dream, but now, under Elon Musk's vision, seemed like it was becoming a reality. Elon Musk paused, his gaze distant, as if he were seeing two futures ahead of him. A future where humanity was forever confined to Earth, and one where we reached out and touched the stars. If something terrible were to happen, what would we do? He sighed softly, then continued, his voice filled with passion. But think of another future, where we're already on multiple planets, maybe even reaching beyond, past the solar system. I think that second scenario is truly exciting and inspiring. He leaned back slightly, his eyes glowing with intense belief. We need a reason to wake up in the morning. Life can't just be about solving problems. If it's all just about facing difficulties, then what's the purpose of life? His voice lowered slightly, but it still carried an unwavering sincerity. There has to be something that excites people, that makes them want to continue, to explore, to conquer. Those are the things that make life worth living. These words weren't just lofty ideals. They were deeply ingrained beliefs, ones forged during his early days of struggle, when life was filled with hardship. When my brother and I started our first company, he continued, a brief smile crossing his face as if recalling the ambitious days of youth. We didn't rent an apartment. Instead, we rented a small office and we slept right on the couch in there. That image of two young men with nothing but a big dream, sleeping on the couch in a rundown office, was the clearest evidence of perseverance and determination. We showered at the nearby gym. Elon went on, his tone light, as if that detail was just a small part of a much bigger picture. We only had one computer, so we had to take turns. One of us would code all night, while the other worked all day. He smiled, but it wasn't just a nostalgic grin. It was proof of a simple truth. Great things never come easily. And perhaps it was those difficult days that shaped Elon Musk into the man he is today. A man who never stops dreaming, never backs down from challenges, and never accepts a mediocre future for humanity. Elon Musk smiled faintly as he remembered those tough times, the days when everything had to be sacrificed to chase a dream larger than oneself. We showered at the YMCA, he said, his voice calm but laced with a subtle pride. At that time, we were so poor we only had one computer. The website had to run during the day, and I did the programming at night. 7 days a week, non-stop. A moment of silence passed, as if he was reflecting on those long nights in front of the screen. Eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep, but with a burning belief that couldn't be shaken. At that time, I even had a girlfriend, he added with a hint of humor. To be with me, she had to sleep right there in the office. The audience chuckled, but behind that seemingly simple story lay a clear truth. Musk wasn't just working hard. He was dedicating every moment of his life to it. I worked non-stop, hour after hour, he said, his gaze sharp. And if you want to start a business, to build something truly meaningful, that's what you have to accept. You have to put every ounce of time, energy, and passion into it. He scanned the room. his eyes sweeping over the young faces, those seeking motivation, those on the cusp of their careers, wondering if they should take the risk and dive into the uncertain path ahead. No matter what field you choose, he said slowly, emphasizing each word, you have to be willing to work more than anyone else. If someone is working 40 hours a week and you're working 80 to 100 hours, even with the same idea, you'll get twice as far in the same time. His voice wasn't just a motivational chant. It was wisdom drawn from experience, from sleepless nights, from repeated failures, from moments when he thought he had lost everything. It wasn't just a formula for success. It was the way the impossible became possible. Elon Musk paused, as if carefully considering each word before speaking. His eyes glinted with the resolve of someone who had faced countless setbacks but never lost faith in the path he chose. No matter how good you are, there's always the possibility of failure, he said slowly. That's a reality we all must face. But there's something more important. You have to really love what you do. He leaned forward, as if to emphasize his words. If you don't love it, life is too short to force yourself into something that doesn't inspire you. But if you truly love it, it will always be on your mind, even when you're not working. You'll think about it when you wake up, when you go to bed, even during the ordinary moments of the day. A silence filled the room, not because of despair, but because everyone was reflecting on their own lives. Passion isn't something you can fake, Musk continued, his voice growing deeper. If you don't genuinely love what you do, you won't be able to sustain it. No way, because on this journey, there will be times so tough that if you don't love your work, you'll want to quit. He leaned back slightly in his chair, as though letting his words sink into the minds of those listening. I've had days when the company was just hours away from bankruptcy, he said, his eyes sparkling with the kind of light only those who have stood on the edge of the abyss can understand. Sleepless nights, seeing the whole world turn its back on me, moments when it seemed like everything was coming to an end. If I didn't truly believe in what I was doing, I would have given up long ago. He scanned the room, where the young faces were listening intently. But I didn't give up, he said, firmly, because I knew it mattered. I knew it was worth fighting for. And above all, I loved it. In that moment, everyone understood that success doesn't just come from talent or luck. It comes from perseverance, passion, and a heart that never stops dreaming. Challenges are inevitable, but how you face them determines who you are. Elon Musk wasn't a genius from the start. He failed, stood on the brink of bankruptcy, was doubted and criticized. But instead of quitting, he persevered, learned, and kept moving forward. Because he believes perseverance is crucial. You shouldn't quit unless you absolutely have to. The same goes for you. There will be tough times, moments when you want to give up. But if you persevere, if you keep moving forward, nothing can stop you. Start your journey today. Hit subscribe to continue exploring valuable lessons that will help you overcome every challenge and achieve your dreams.